Two candidates, two town halls, one time slot. We watched so you didn't have to. Plus, a close call in space and love-hate to end another wild week. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Friday, October 16th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Happy Friday, Jill. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I've had this jingle in my head for like 3 days now. This TV jingle, and it's just the worst, isn't it? I don't even want to say what it is.
Okay, yeah, don't.
because it's gonna thousands of people will have it in their head.
It's not Cars for Kids, is it? Because that one gets in my head all the time.
Okay. I'll tell you what it is. It's O'Reilly Auto Parts. Do you know? I'm not going to sing it.
I don't think I know it.
I'm not going to sing it. I won't do that to people. So anyway, that's what I'm dealing with this morning. And by the way, I'm sorry I was so sour yesterday, folks. Sometimes the news just gets the best of me, but I'm feeling good this morning.
All right, great. So let's get to it. President Trump and Joe Biden mostly staying on the opposing political tracks that they've been running on for the last few months at two dueling town hall appearances, one on NBC, one on ABC last night. The president, again, refusing to denounce QAnon. He questioned the effectiveness, once again, of masks and the legitimacy of the election, but he did appear to commit to a peaceful transfer of power for the first time. But it was part of this contentious, rapid-fire back and forth with NBC's Savannah Guthrie. She's getting pretty great reviews, at least in some circles, for her moderation and conversational style of questioning. I think that'll probably take a little bit of the heat off of NBC for their decision to even run this town hall at the same time that Joe Biden had his town hall over on ABC.
Yeah, I was saying to my wife yesterday, I was like, oh, God, Savannah Guthrie has the worst job in the world tonight. Just because of what a microscope she was going to be under. But she acquitted herself pretty well. She's a very talented journalist. Yeah, Jill, I mean, how much of these did you watch? Did you stay up for the whole shebang?
I did. I mean, but it was hard because they were on at the same time.
Impossible.
So I basically was just switching back and forth. I did barf when that woman said to President Trump, did you catch it when
God,
she's
don't even.
I love your smile. You have a great smile or something. So I was watching this by myself. And I was like physically uncomfortable. I don't know. I was looking on Twitter if anyone responded to that. I was like, ugh.
My brother even sent that to me, and he's not particularly politically active, so it was just that definitely broke through.
It was cringeworthy.
Right? Yeah.
Sorry, if anyone else saw it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, you're lucky.
She came to play, that woman. A couple other just quick takeaways from last night. So on NBC, President Trump did not say whether or not he was tested before the first debate, which I think is just one of these questions that we will probably have for forever and never get answered. He said that people can decide for themselves whether a conspiracy theory that he retweeted the other day, which suggested that Joe Biden had the Navy SEALs who killed Osama bin Laden murdered. He suggested whether that you can decide for yourself whether that's real or not. Just, sure, okay. And again, he also did not, as you said, but it's just worth repeating, he did not condemn a satanic child sex ring that believes that he is Jesus Christ.
That's QAnon, just to be clear.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Savannah Guthrie gave him many opportunities to say and he kept saying, I don't know anything. I don't know that much, but I know that they don't like pedophilia, and that's good. Like, it was just so bizarre.
I don't get why he can't. It seems like it's such a softball, such a layup. Anyway, over in reality on ABC News, I think Joe Biden, he was pressed by George Stephanopoulos on what he would have done differently in the pandemic, as well as his position on packing the Supreme Court, which is relatively controversial. Biden, for the record, saying that he would have an answer on that question before the election. He also said that his support of the 1994 crime bill that he helped author was a mistake. I believe that was the first time that he said as much on that front. And something else little that sort of caught my attention. He was asked what it would say about America if he lost the election, and Biden replied, quote, "It could say that I'm a lousy candidate, And he added that it hopes it doesn't say that the U.S. is as divided as it appears the president wants us to be. I thought that was really interesting and refreshing, even because, Jill, I mean, having covered a million elections, right? Candidates are often given a question like that, and they are trained to answer that question by saying, I'm not going to lose. So I thought it was kind of interesting to hear him sort of reflect on just give like a straight answer on that, because obviously anyone can lose any election, right? I think the bottom line, if you didn't catch these things, there wasn't much to be gleaned either way. Trump was, I think, his usual self. Biden was pretty boring, to be honest. And I suspect a lot of people found that refreshing.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris says that she tested negative for coronavirus after 2 of her campaign staffers tested positive, although she's not going to get back on the trail until Monday to be safe. It comes as COVID cases in the U.S. are fast approaching a third peak, led by states like Alaska, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And this has officials worried about a lack of ICU beds in rural areas, which, by the way, is an issue pre-COVID. Like lack of proper medical care and not enough hospitals in rural communities in this country is an issue that is only exacerbated by the pandemic.
Yep.
Deaths are for now staying flat at around 800 a day. Dr. Fauci is warning that the U.S. needs to get its baseline caseload down significantly before the winter. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau says that Canada is going to keep its border with the U.S. closed indefinitely, at least until America gets its act together, pretty much.
Imagine that. Imagine thinking that 4 years ago. You wouldn't be able to go to Canada in 2020 if you needed to. It's pretty amazing when you think about the restrictions that are still in place against Americans traveling. The president, by the way, he is holding a rally in Wisconsin tomorrow. Even as you said, they are among the states in the worst shape right now, and they're even setting up a field hospital in Wisconsin to deal with the overloading cases in hospitals. Jill, a couple random threads on the pandemic that I wanted to make mention of this week that we just didn't really get a chance to. There was this really interesting study out of Yale that found the daycare centers presented this extremely low risk of transmission as long as the adults and the caregivers wore masks and the kids were told to wash their hands or helped washing their hands. That's very promising, and I think it's just really amazing how our knowledge of the virus has matured in these last few months, right? Like, it's turning out that schools and daycare centers are not these vectors, these super spreader vectors that we thought they could have been, which is really good news. There was a different study about transmission on airplanes that found it is, quote, virtually non-existent if everybody is in their seats and masked and following the rules. Meanwhile, 2 separate super spreader events that we haven't talked about. One was at a Sweet 16 party out by you in Long Island last weekend. And another one was at the Spin Studio in Canada, which is really interesting because they followed all the COVID protocols in terms of just like the sanitation and keeping only to 25% occupancy, I think. But as we talk about all the time, a lot of those protocols, right, they're meaningless if you're going to be conducting an event indoors with heavy breathing and bad air filtration, which is sort of like what a spin class is, right? The 6 feet rule doesn't apply in those scenarios. All of this is just to say that it really reinforces my sort of unified theory on our COVID response now, which is close gyms, close bars, close indoor restaurants, any place that is high risk like that. Pay those businesses and employees to stay home for the next 6 months. Keep schools open, daycare open, essential operations like that with mandatory masks in place. It just seems so simple to me. But of course, it takes really competent leadership to do something like that.
One other COVID headline, Christie is out of the hospital, and he said he's feeling a lot better. But he put out a pretty lengthy statement that I read this morning. He said after spending a week in the ICU in isolation, it gave him a lot of time to think, and he apologized for not wearing a mask while prepping the president for the debate. He apologized for not wearing a mask at that Rose Garden ceremony for Amy Coney Barrett for when she was nominated to the Supreme Court, which is being viewed as this super spreader event. He said he's not I think he was trying. It sounded like he was trying to contrast himself a little bit with the president by saying, I'm not happy I have this virus. It's serious. Take it seriously because it can have horrible consequences. He made a point to say that if we just follow the guidelines, we don't need to shut everything down. But also notable that he received this antibody cocktail from Eli Lilly, which regular people cannot get. So we are now seeing this is the stuff that irks me, is the president and Christie, who both are super high risk, Christie especially high risk, both just didn't follow the rules, thought the rules didn't apply to them, and both getting extreme special treatment. Obviously medical care that no one else can get. And now they're both fine, and at least Christie is a little bit remorseful. But that's the stuff, you were revved up yesterday. Like, that's the stuff that irks me, because I think about, God forbid, somebody I love got this virus. Like, they wouldn't have access to these treatments, and we're doing the right thing, and you could still get it. So it's just like, I don't know. To me,
no, I think, Jill, you're right. You're totally right.
It's blood boiling.
I mean, you're telling me that you don't have a military helicopter at the ready to take you to the best hospitals in America to pump you full of, the latest, greatest experimental treatments? No, of course.
Even Christie, who was a former governor, he was admitted into the hospital very shortly after he was diagnosed as a precaution. At least that was what they had said. Regular people do not have access to. They send people home. If you are a normal person, you are not allowed in a hospital unless you're in serious shape, in seriously bad shape. So it's just kind of like, do you guys have any awareness, the special treatment that you're getting? It doesn't sound
well
like
said.
it.
Yeah. No, that's very well said.
Okay. We'll move on. So today was my turn, Carlo. YouTube, by the way, the latest tech platform to crack down on QAnon, banning any content related to the conspiracy movement if it threatens real-world violence. So it's not a complete ban, which is pretty notable. And the journalists who cover QAnon say that YouTube has actually played the biggest role of any platform in moving the group from the fringes into the mainstream, as YouTube videos are often cross-posted to Facebook, where they spread like wildfire.
Yeah, it's back to the algorithm, right? The algorithm that is, endangering democracy. But that's a great point, and it's why that this is probably a little more significant than the actual Facebook QAnon ban, because all of the stuff, like you said, tends to bubble up on YouTube. But of course, it begs this question about how much can they really do, right? This is all whack-a-mole. I follow some reporters who are really deep in the QAnon beat, which has just got to be a really hard reporter beat. But they've said that, the Q people are now telling each other in message boards and on the Chan message boards that they shouldn't use the phrase QAnon, that there's all this like sort of coded language now to get over these different social media bans. So it's it's very hard to, once something like this starts, to sort of put it out, right? But I guess props to Google for at least doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's also the question of like, you can't ignore it. I think media has a tough role too, because you don't want to ignore it, because now you have actual candidates who have won elections who are on this like QAnon platform. But when you think about it, how many people were watching last night's town hall debate with President Trump and maybe hadn't even heard of QAnon, and then we're just like, what is QAnon? Googling it, and then they go down their own rabbit hole.
It's
tough.
Scary.
It's really tough. It is scary, and it's like if the question of just social media companies banning content, when the president's talking about it or a politician's talking about it, they're not banning that. It's like we're in this crazy gray area right now.
Yeah.
I do want
to. Sorry, no, I just wanted to say, like, the thing with conspiracy theories is, I mean, I have people in my life who, don't believe the moon landing was real, or don't believe that, believe that the mafia killed JFK, right? But they mostly say those things like at Thanksgiving dinner, and everybody sort of like brushes them off, right? They're not the social media aspect, though, is the thing that's scary, right? Everyone's entitled to their own beliefs, of course, but it's the revving people up online that is so different from past. I mean, conspiracy theories are nothing new, of course.
Right. No, I had a photographer who, at some place I used to work, who didn't believe anything really happened. Like he was
Yeah,
just
right.
like that. You buy that?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, that we landed on the moon. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Call me crazy,
yeah.
but I'm pretty sure that happened.
Switching gears, we've been talking a lot about the movie industry, but not that much about the theater industry. So the Tony nominations were announced yesterday, even though we still don't know when or how this award show is going to take place. Jagged Little Pill, based on the Alanis Morissette album, that got 15 nominations to lead the Best Musical race. And A Slave Play scored 12 nominations, and that is the most ever for a play.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, Jill. I'm not a huge Broadway person, so sometimes I feel like I can get blinders on when it comes to covering some of these industries that I'm not like a huge fan of or hugely familiar with. But it's just we cannot stop pounding the table on some of these industries that are in serious, serious trouble and need serious help and serious aid. These nominations coming amid the biggest crisis in the history of the theater industry, right? All productions basically shut down. They said this week, Broadway said they're not going to be back until next summer, as we mentioned. So I don't know what we can do other than just keep thinking about these people and keep pounding the table on just these industries that are just I just feel so bad. I don't know what they can do, right? I mean, this is how these people make a living.
And there's nothing, right? Well, what can you do? I mean, it's genuinely not safe to go and see a Broadway show. I've interviewed this Broadway actress, Christian Tisdale, who's in Wicked.
Yep.
I've interviewed her a couple of times. And she's talked about it. It's not just that she said, she's a saver, so she's actually in a decent position. But she said some of her friends and coworkers, they've had to give up their apartments. They've moved in back home with family. And not only that, it's, we talk about just the mental health toll of this. Sure. Jobs, especially jobs that you love, that you're passionate about, they give you purpose, and to just for months on end to not be able to do what you feel like this passion about and what gives you life has just got to be so hard.
Not to mention just the unbelievable hit on New York City tourism that this is doing, right?
Yeah, the restaurant. I mean, it's not just the shows, of course. It's not just Broadway stars who work at those shows. It's people behind the scenes. It's ushers. It's people who sell, vendors. Yep. There's T-shirts. There's restaurants nearby, hotels, cabs, Ubers. Yep. The list goes on. And finally, though, we're going to just totally switch gears here. A close call overhead last night. An old Soviet satellite and a piece of a decommissioned Chinese rocket came within feet of each other in space. This has averted a major collision. Astronomers have worried about that said they were nervous that it would have set off a wave of space debris into low Earth orbit. But this issue of space junk is quite real. NASA has been ringing alarm bells about this for years, saying that the amount of stuff in orbit, from human waste to rocket stages, is already creating hazards for spacecraft launches, operational satellites, and the ISS.
Look, I don't have enough to worry about, Jill. I got to worry about space junk now. No, I love a good wiki hole, and I was researching the story last night, and I found a great one. If anyone else likes to just go down these rabbit holes on Wikipedia, it's called the Kessler Syndrome, and it's this theory by an old NASA astronomer that suggests that eventually there's going to be a space collision between two old things, and it's going to set off a sort of cascade of other collisions that will render low Earth orbit just an impenetrable mass of debris because there's just so much stuff orbiting the Earth. So I don't think it's something we have to worry about seriously at the moment, but it's a good thing to mention. It's a good thing to keep in the back of our heads, right?
It is 2020. You never
why
know.
Not? Space junk.
All right, let's do a little bit of Love, Hate, 8. Carlo, kick it off.
Okay, one thing we love, I'm going with this song by the band Avenue Beat. The song is called F2020, and I've heard that this is the big song among the kids, among the teens, as they say. It's like sort of the sleeper hit. And I was going to play a clip, but I don't want to get sued. But my favorite lyric in the song, I am kind of done. Can we just get to 2021? So that's going right. So I linked to that to the music video in the newsletter. It's a good jam.
One thing that we hate, shows or bands that tease a reunion special, that is just a PSA to vote. If you're watching a West Wing reunion, chances are you're already voting.
Yeah, this is like the people on Twitter who make a big thing about telling people to vote, and it's like if you're on Twitter all day, it's probably a pretty safe bet that you're an active registered voter. I don't want to be too cute, Jill, because like everybody obviously should vote and they should do their part, and there's nothing wrong with telling people to vote. But when it becomes a sort of like virtue signal, it just kind of annoys me. So I'm with you on that.
By the way, my latest saga in my voter registration situation is here, and I very quickly, I'm now, you know what? That's going to be a deep tease because we're running out of time, but you will not believe the latest. So we'll talk about it on Monday.
Hold it over for Monday.
Yes.
Okay. And finally, one thing we ate, just an entire one of those sleeves of saltines. I bought one of those big boxes of saltines last weekend for some reason, and my wife and I have just been housing them just all week, and they are really addictive. I don't think I've had a saltine since I was probably in elementary school, but wow.
This is something, you're on my page with this. This is something that I could do, and like I'll take like 4 out at once. You know what I mean? And you just. It's almost, I feel like a satisfaction when you get to the end of that saltines, the whole sleeve.
And then just feeling deep regret about your life decisions. But say love me.
They are called saltines. Like they're quite salty. I feel like my face was quite blown up after. Okay, we're gonna leave it there. Everyone have a great weekend. That's what you need to know for Friday, October 16th.
Bye, guys.